Hello! Now you can hear me, even though no one's ever said they could not hear me before, so we'll see. So, good afternoon. My name is Teri Hall, and I'm your Vice President for Student Affairs. Provost Muma and I, Acting President as well. We have a short program, a couple of videos and some information about Shock the Future, the referendum, and then we'll be open for questions afterward. So with that, we'll start the first video.
Shock the Future campaign is a campus improvement initiative that you'll be asked to consider this spring in a referendum. I'd like to spend a few moments explaining why this is so important to you and the university. In my short time as provost, I have spoken to the deans numerous times about their quality of classrooms and labs. Based on their discussions with students and faculty, the deans identified significant needs for Henry and Hall: updated biology labs, clinical space improvements driven by accreditation requirements, centralized service space needed for all undergraduate and graduate students in a renovated Clinton Hall, a restroom in the library's 24-hour study space, and a new business building. Unfortunately, the state of Kansas does not fund capital improvement projects of this magnitude. This leaves us with raising funds through donations and borrowing money through a bond initiative. The latter requires a source of revenue to pay back the bond. This means using student fees, in this case raising fees for everyone by $6 per credit hour. To this point, we have raised almost $30 million in private donations towards the $50 million business building, where space will be shared by all types of students. That's about as much as we think we can raise for the project, which is an incredible amount given our donor base. We now have an opportunity to borrow the additional $20 million needed to build the business building and another $18.5 million to make improvements in the core part of the university. Combining these projects into one bond issue also saves money compared to doing this in 2 stages. All the projects are scheduled to be completed within 3 years of the referendum passing, so many of you will enjoy the benefits of new and renovated spaces. For those graduating sooner, you'll be leaving a legacy for future Shockers, just like your Shocker alums did when they approved funding for the RSC renovation. Finally, the WSU Foundation is providing opportunities for faculty and staff to contribute to this project, and that includes me. If you have any further questions, message me on Twitter at WSU_Provost or email me at provost@wichita.edu. Shockers, now's the time. Let's shock the future.
That includes me too, Provost Muma. I've given money toward this project as well, Clinton Hall in particular.
Great. Thank you, Teri. Welcome everyone. I'm Rick Muma, Provost, and right now serving as Acting President. And we wanted to give a little bit more information, have a chance for you all to ask questions about this initiative. And we have a few slides we want to click through here. These are all the projects. If you were to add those up, excluding the business building, it's about $18.5 million of additional projects across campus. Let me just go through each one of these so you can have a little bit of understanding of why these were selected. We have information on the website, wichita.edu, Shock the Future, but it may not be clear to people. So, in the College of Applied Studies and Liberal Arts and Sciences Psychology, there's 2 programs there, the Play Therapy program and the Clinical Psychology program, that have accreditation requirements. Those requirements are telling us right now that we're deficient in those lab spaces for both of those programs. So that puts the program's accreditation at risk for both of those. And I'll come back to that in a minute because it relates also to the College of Health Professions. College of Engineering has some needs in their wind tunnel that needs to be fixed. We think that we might be able to use some repair and rehabilitation money to do that. So if we don't use I think it's $100,000 for that particular project, if we don't use that for engineering, the bond money, then we can use it for other things. College of Fine Arts, many of you know that Henry Inn is one of the oldest buildings on campus. It's a former gymnasium hooked to the former football field. That's why it has that little slant at the end of it on the, the east end of it. Doesn't have any air conditioning in some places. It has really horrible teaching space, and it's just not adequate at all to continue to provide programming in that area. We need to do something, and we should have been doing something a long time ago, but for various reasons we haven't been able to. College of Health Professions is in desperate need for some centralized service space. They have a lot of students in their programs that require a lot of high-end advising and various student services. And if we take out the dental hygiene clinic and move it over to where the general dentistry building is over at the Metroplex, we can free up that space, which would be ideal for that kind of learning space and advising space for students. And so next to that space is where the clinic space would be for the play therapy program and the clinical psychology program, which is currently the student health space, which will be moved to where the new YMCA is being built. So that frees up a lot of different spaces for this purpose. In terms of Fairmount College and Liberal Arts and Sciences, we've updated our chemistry labs several years ago in McKinley Hall, but we haven't done that for biology. So it's just not for liberal arts and sciences, but it is obviously in the biology department, so it benefits those students who are majoring in biology, but it also benefits all kinds of other students who are needing to take biology for their particular major. So it's really benefits a group of people across the campus. The Institute for Interdisciplinary Innovation, which is a new academic unit that houses the Master of Innovation Design program, will be moving eventually into the space where the Wonder School is. When that happens, when the Wonder School moves to a newer space, then there will be some renovations that will need to take place to accommodate the Master of Innovation Design program. The university libraries has been talking to students and me and various people for years about having restroom facilities in their 24-hour study space. This is a safety issue. Students are there all night long studying. They have to leave that facility and go to another location on campus to use the restroom. So that's obvious reason to want to do that space, but additionally that will allow us to have some other collaboration spaces to go along with that 24-hour study space. Career Development Center is located over where Brennan Hall is. I think it's in Brennan 3. If you've ever been over there, those are very old facilities. And right now, career development doesn't have a very open and conducive environment to talking to students about their careers. The idea is to combine career development with admissions and have the whole life cycle of a student being presented to them at the very beginning of their curriculum. So the idea is to move career development over to the Marcus Welcome Center, and we're hoping to do that mostly through private funding. And then the most exciting project is Clinton Hall renovation. So once the business building is built, then that building will be vacated, and you've seen some of the renderings, really awesome look and feel for that new facility that will house all kinds of student service areas. So Office of Student Success, the Military Veteran Student Center, a graduate student center. We don't have one of those currently. Disability services, various other student-centered kinds of activities and services that's needed in a centralized place for students. And then finally, the business building, as the video said, we've raised close to $30 million privately, and we think that's about as much as we're going to be able to raise for that business building. This will also allow us to bond the rest of that to build a state-of-the-art business building. All of these facilities are important for students across the campus. It's important for us to have a state-of-the-art business building, particularly in this community. All of our regents schools in the state, particularly the research schools, have all built new business buildings. We're losing students to those programs and others that have really nice facilities. And it also helps students learn better, learn new skills, learn how to collaborate differently, which the business world is expecting. So those are sort of an overview of what we're trying to do and why. We thought it'd be important to put this up here. Currently our tuition and fees as compared to the University of Kansas and Kansas State University. You can see that we're the lowest among those 3 institutions, and even with this fee increase of $6 per credit hour, we'd still remain the lowest. So, what's a referendum? A couple of things to point out in previous student votes for new facilities. So any academic building that's going to be bonded has to have a student referendum. So that's why we're doing a student-wide referendum vote. We didn't have to do that with the RSC because that's not an academic building, but we did do a survey of students, and the majority of students supported it, and that's why this project moved forward. We didn't have to do that for the Shocker Hall, even though that was bonded, but that's not an academic building. So there's different reasons why we have to do different kinds of votes, and this requires by statute that we do a student-wide referendum. That's going to be on March 4th through the 6th, and Teri maybe can talk about this a little bit later, or Nancy, how that's going to work if anybody has any questions. So the big question is, what happens if this doesn't pass? So I've been saying this, and the Sunflower actually covered this week. If this doesn't pass, then the projects that I just talked about on the core part of this institution, they're not going to be able to move forward. Does that mean they never will move forward in the future? Probably not, but they're not going to move forward through this referendum initiative. We will have to find a way to build the business building. The business building is obviously central to the future of this institution and our community and our region, and we've had donors give us $30 million to build it, so we have to find a way to do that. And the obvious way that we would do that if this referendum doesn't pass is that the business students will have to vote on raising their fees. Obviously, they're going to be paying more than $6 per credit hour if that happens. Personally, I think that to have one group of students finance a building is problematic for those students and for this institution. And that's why when we started planning this, that we felt like that we needed to spread this out and provide opportunities to do improvements across campus. To me, and I'm all about the common good, of spreading the burden out across as many people as possible, because that's where we get the lower amount of student fees to charge students to do any of these kinds of things. Having just one group of students to me is not acceptable.
I'm a nursing major.
I am a future doctor.
I am a biomedical engineering major.
I am a transition mentor.
I am a first-generation student.
I am a Wichita native. I am a diversity intern.
I am an international student.
I am a Wichita State student.
I am a Wichita State student.
I'm a Wichita State student.
I am a Wichita State student.
Wichita State
Is where
Innovation
Creativity, entrepreneurship,
And technology.
come
to
together.
create a brighter future for Shockers.
as alumni did for us. It's time
It's time.
for improvements.
for the community,
For every college. For every dream.
For every passion.
for every shocker.
For every shocker.
For every shocker.
Stand with me.
Stand with me.
Stand with me.
And with me. And together we can.
So those students that you just saw are part of a steering committee that came together this last fall, and then there's another smaller group of those individuals who we call an executive committee. They're the ones that have been putting together this campaign, and they've worked really hard to provide information that will help students, faculty, staff understand why we need to do this. And I also want to just call a little shout out to the deans across the university who've been helpful in providing information to students so their students understand why those projects in their areas are being proposed. So I think we're at a point now where we're going to open it up to questions, and I'm going to have Teri facilitate that.
Thank you, Provost Muma. What kind of questions do you have for us? Yes.
It was mentioned that you said if the $100,000 for engineering is not used for that project because there's a potential for that money to come from somewhere else, that it could be used elsewhere, does that mean elsewhere within the College of Engineering or elsewhere within other, other areas of that project?
I can really talk.
It's on, okay. To be determined, but we want to make sure that the engineering college and their leadership would weigh in on that before that decision was made.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you. So if this wouldn't pass and business students would then have to vote on a second referendum and that would not pass, you've raised $30 million, this business school is happening, would that vote be something of a formality, or if business students voted that down, how would you move forward with that project?
We'd have to see exactly what the thinking is among the business students and why they voted that down. It'd be problematic to go back to donors and say, hey, no one wants a business building here. We're going to give your money back. I mean, that's not something that's I think that we'd want to do. My hope is that that's not going to happen, Matt, because I think we made the case that we need to make improvements, but we'll just have to reevaluate it at that time. I don't have a answer 100% right now.
Well, you said you've been impressed by how quickly $30 million was raised for the business school. That's been a talking point. What leads you to believe that is that most that you can garner from donor support for this project?
What was the last part of that?
What makes you think that's the most that you can get in donor support for this project?
Well, I don't think I said I was impressed of how rapidly that money was.
That's just like...
Yeah, I think that's your interpretation of it, but it hasn't been rapidly raised. We've been working on this for more than 5 years. And we just now recently got to where we thought we would end up, as it was about $30 million. Mm-hmm. And the foundation has a pretty good idea of where the potential donors are, and this is where they think the limit is.
Okay.
It's not that we're not going to continue to raise money for the business building or any of these projects, but right now this is where we think we're going to end up.
I just have one more question. Could I ask? Okay. So the wording on the proposed referendum that was discussed at the Shock the Future meeting the other day is that there's only one way for this slate of improvements to become a reality, which is through raising student fees. Is that misleading? Because technically the state will not fund a new building, but that's specific to the business school. The rest of the improvements, there's technically other avenues that those projects can be completed. So is that a misleading way to phrase that?
It's still open for discussion of how that's being phrased. I don't really remember that. We've been raising money at this university for many, 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 many years. So we know where the donors are. And the donors are not there to build restroom facilities. They're not there to do some of these smaller projects that are still needed. So I don't think it's misleading. I think it's just the reality of it. You might think that, we'll just go out and raise whatever it is for a new career development center, but that's easier said than done, because you have to have someone who's interested in doing that.
And Matt, Emily Patterson is here, who's our Director of Facilities Planning. As an institution, as of 2016, I think we were $90 million in the rears for maintenance on campus. And so while we get $3.5 million every year, if you can imagine, $3.5 million is not going to go very far to get us out of the deficit that we're in for $90 million. And so that's part of why it's worded that way, that while we get some money to rehab and refurbish buildings, we'll never get enough if not through this process.
Well, and the other thing is that you can only use that money for certain kinds of repairs and rehabilitation. You can't do it for new construction. It's not allowed.
So kind of going off of that, how were the decisions made for these, like how were they prioritized to say these improvements need to happen first, and follow up, is there another phase of this potentially happening to address the other concerns on campus that aren't mentioned in this referendum?
So just to answer the second part of your question, there's always going to be projects that we're going to need to focus on. So yes, there will be, down the road, there will be other things. As I said in the video, the deans are the ones that came together and with their individual list of their projects and prioritized that. The deans, then we met as a group several times to get that down to the list that we had. So there's many more millions of dollars of projects that are needed on this campus, and these are the ones that we felt were most needed. And they got that feedback, in some cases, just years of feedback from talking to students, looking at various surveys that students complete in terms of their needs and desires and wishes, and taking that feedback into consideration. And then just talking to students even more recent time frame about what would they like to see happen. I think even the dean of the library took some feedback from a recent SGA survey that was asking students about what their needs were.
And these projects were selected in part because of the breadth of touch that they offer as well. That if you look at the list of the things that are within that $18.5 million, there are going to be very few, if any, students that aren't going to see the benefit from the Shock the Future campaign. You know, that with each of the colleges picking such important items, the whole campus is going to be improved because of that. All right, I'll just give.
So kind of going off of that, then you said that this kind of campaign has been going for like 5 years or so based on information from surveys and collected from students. Is there a way for students to continue to add feedback? Because I feel like there are some things that may have developed over those 5 years of time or may have just recently come into the consciousness. For example, there's no women's restroom on the second floor of the engineering building. That's kind of happened for a while since I believe it was built. 60. I run a whole initiative about that. But my follow-up question, my whole question is, how can students continue to give that feedback? And on the side note, you mentioned students were involved in the campaign and it's marketed as a student-led referendum. Do students have voting power on those committees, or was it just kind of a prioritized list from the deans? Or I don't know enough about this and I just want to know, so.
Yeah, did you want to answer that, Teri? Well, so the students, in terms of how they conduct their meetings, they actually lead the meetings, and we're there to help answer any questions that we might have. In terms of the projects, so the deans brought those forward after they got student feedback in their particular areas. So we haven't had any conversation at those meetings about, well, should we take this off the list or that off the list? Because after all, the deans have already done that with their own student population. So that's the thinking behind that.
But I think we have commitment from our deans, though, to continue to get input, right? As we think about what the space might look like in Alburg, to include students and some of your future healthcare association students to get feedback about, is this the right kind of layout, or is this going to be helpful? So I think students will still be included as we're making decisions. And there's still some question about what all might go into Clinton. And so are there other things that could go into Clinton that we haven't thought about yet? So there'll be opportunities for involvement all the way through this process. But always within your college, your dean is your best place to give that feedback to. Okay, other questions? This is not an interview.
Sorry. So you've talked about, about how a new business school benefits not only business students, but all students. And how exactly would Woolsey Hall be a benefit to all students?
So do you know where the business school is now?
In Clinton.
Clinton, okay. Have you had classes in there?
No.
No? I'm sure other students have had classes in Clinton Hall. There's lots of different spaces in there that are used for all kinds of students. That'll be the same thing in Woolsey Hall. Most of the students I've talked to about this, they don't even know that the business school is in Clinton Hall currently, so they may not even make that connection when Woosley Hall opens up. So there's going to be all kinds of connection space, common space. There's going to be a big auditorium in there that students will be able to use that space just like a business student will be able to use the space.
Other questions? What are the concerns that you've heard from others about what's happening with the referendum? No one knows about it? Well, and part of it is that we've sequenced the information to really start loading it up now that we're in the spring semester. And so that's why all the deans are having so many town halls. That's why Dr. Muma and I are doing so many of these things to get more information as a just-in-time or as we get closer. Because we thought too much in the fall would get lost in that process. And so we're hoping by the time we're planning, by the time we get to March 4th, that folks should say they know about it.
And there's been lots of written stuff about it too. We have Shock the Future, wichita.edu/Shock the Future. The Sunflowers had several articles about it too, so I would encourage them to go to those articles. I've written an editorial in the Wichita Eagle. I've written an editorial for the Sunflower, getting ready to have an interview with the Wichita Business Journal. And then I know that's not student-oriented, but it's people out in the community, too, are asking questions of why we're asking students to do this. So we want those people to know about it as well. And we'll continue to repeat those kinds of things in WSU Blast and other kinds of things. But as you know, I remember when I was a student, I just had my head down, I was trying to be serious, went to class, went home, went to work. I think there's a lot of that going on too, and people may not pay attention to it, as Teri said, until it gets a little bit closer. But it's up to you as a student. Are you a student? Yep. So
he's a homecoming king candidate.
Okay, yeah, sorry. It's up to you too, as a student, to communicate this to your classmates, because this is an important issue.
My experience has been, though, that there are lots of students that might even be negative about it or know nothing about it, but then once you have a conversation, they kind of change their mind about it a little bit because it gets it past that we're just building a business building. And I've been here, this is my 5th semester, my second, starting my 3rd year, and that everybody, when I first got here, complained about everything is happening on the innovation campus and there's nothing happening on the core of campus. And so Shock the Future completely negates that, right? So certainly that's where the land is for the business building, but then the rest of the campus is really going to see this improvement as well. Other questions? I hear that the bathrooms are a popular item in the 24-hour study space, that students have talked about that need for a while. Haven't they, Kathy? Here. What's going to go in that study space? Now I'm just going to kind of vamp and get people to talk.
I would invite you all to come to the University Library's town halls next week on the 5th and 6th. But Teri, a small correction, it's the lack of bathrooms that have been of interest to people in the 24-hour study room. And so what we're planning on doing is working with facilities planning to put in unisex bathrooms, which is something else we need in the libraries, as well as expanding that space so that there are more areas for students to work in. Prior to the holidays, we had whiteboards up with students coming in saying what do they want to have in a 24-hour study room. We got some wonderful suggestions on that, and my colleague over here, Ginger Williams, and I have them all recorded down. As we get closer if the funding is provided, we'll be working with facilities planning to make sure that those suggestions are added into the plan. During our town halls, we also are going to be soliciting students who want to continue with us in this journey.
So students like to say to me that this is just like the Y, that no matter what comes up, that the university is going to do whatever they want to do about this. And what I want to do, and I want to remind you all, was that the 59th session said no to the Y, the 60th session brought it back up. And if it wasn't for the 60th session coming forward to saying they thought having a Y and a wellness center on campus was a good idea, it wouldn't have happened. And so that's kind of been lost from the narrative about this, that the university just did whatever they wanted to, which is not true. And so if you can help people understand the difference about that, because that's really misunderstood. I'm just going to keep talking to you, King wannabe. You're my guy. Other questions or thoughts? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you made an interesting point about everyone saying, you know, nothing is being built on like regular campus, everything's an innovation campus. So when I was coming in as a freshman, everything I heard about innovation campus was that's all going to be, you know, privately funded. We're getting money from outside of campus, bringing it, like, you know, students aren't paying for that. And maybe I was wrong. I believe the the new engineering building was not paid for by student fees or student funding. That was all other money as well. But now with, I mean, a $6 increase for students, that money now is directly going towards the Innovation Campus. So is that no longer the idea on Innovation Campus, is that students aren't paying for it, or?
Well, it's an academic building. It just happens to be located on the Innovation Campus. So I think that's the difference there. And these other buildings that are being built on the Innovation Campus, with the exception of the academic building, the engineering building, are private-public partnerships.
Other questions? You done, Matt? No more questions? All right. Please know that I do believe that women should be engineers too. I don't want that out there. Oh, thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I get enough harassment on Facebook without that.
Just also want to say there's other town halls that are posted on Shock the Future website. I think we have 4 or 5 more, a couple of more general ones. We're having one for residence life, fraternity and sorority life.
RSOs, registered student organizations.
Yeah. So plenty of different opportunities to encourage your classmates to attend those, and they're at different times too. Some of them multiple times on the same day even.
So going off of that, is there, aside from social media and town halls, is there any like grassroots campaign to like go through the RSC where all of our fellow students are at this moment and tell them about it?
So there is some, Nancy, you want to talk about that?
So part of the steering committee is we have a logistics committee, and so their job has been to help push this information out. So we have our marketing committee that's created a lot of the t-shirts, the buttons, the promo items that you see around. And then our logistics committee has been having 2 tables a week. In the RSC, they'll actually be at Springfest tomorrow night, if you're at Springfest from 5 to 7 over in the Heskett. And so every week until the last week, we'll be having a couple tables, not only in the RSC, we're gonna get to some other locations on campus, but there's banners, if you've seen the banners in front of the buildings. There's renderings, my office is full of renderings. There's probably at least several dozen renderings when you look at all the areas across campus. So we're getting more banners put out. We're also putting out yard signs next week. There'll be chalking coming up a little bit later because of the weather. So sandwich board, there's a lot of different things that we're helping to get the word out to students. But certainly if you have ideas, let us know, because we want to know how to best reach students. So we're always open to that feedback. But yeah, we have a group that has been working hard to get the word out because we want to make sure students are informed.
We also have a full set of the renderings that are going to be downstairs on the first floor as well. So because everybody walks through here, and so it's a nice. I think it's going to be pretty impressive because right now they're kind of dispersed by all the buildings, but to be able to walk through and see them all, I think is going to be pretty powerful. And so I'm looking forward to those getting up.
Just also to point out, there's a frequent asked question list of questions on Shock the Future. If you scroll through those and it doesn't really answer everything you want to know, please let us know, and we'll make sure we try to answer that question. We're adding regularly to that.
Yes, Heba.
Hello. Okay, so I'm no longer a student, so we'll put that out there. But I think the referendum, I think a lot of concern is that the referendum will impact our most vulnerable students. We pride ourselves on affordability. Mr. Rick, you put up the cost breakdown that we're cheaper than most public universities on campus. What does scholarship opportunities, or I don't even know if you can answer this, but financial aid look like for those students who just cannot make that $180 a semester? addition on there.
So it would only be a maximum, it'd be $90 a semester, 180
80 a year.
Yeah, yeah. So 90 a semester, 180 a year. And actually, Kim Sandlin and I are with a bunch of other folks talking about how do we better meet the needs of our high need students, because we hear that a lot. We hear that there's a gap between what they get in scholarship and what they're able to pay, and so we want to talk about how do we help better meet the needs of those students. So that is an issue for us. The highest need students probably are going to do the best because they're going to probably get some more aid that's going to help cover this. But it's those students that are a little bit in the middle that don't qualify for as much aid. Those are students that might feel this pinch a little bit.
I'll just add, I'm very sensitive to this too, because enrollment is part of my responsibilities at the university. And trust me, we talk about this a lot. And recently there was an article in the WSU Foundation Horizon newsletter, and it was written by me, one of my main focuses for the last 2 years of the Shock the World campaign, we finished the first 5 years, the last 2 is raising scholarships for students who have that gap, need-based aid. We've raised $80 million in scholarships over this first 5 years, and we're hoping to raise a significant amount more money over this last 2 years. So it is an issue. I understand it. But we also can't stand still at the university and not do any of these things because then we're going to have issues on that side of the house. So we are trying to go at it from every angle, and the foundation has already started their initiatives to try to raise more need-based aid.
Other questions?
So you talked about ideas for getting students aware of this, and obviously there's tabling with the steering committee and other events. Why don't you just have those representatives go into classrooms? Is that like an option that could happen?
Yeah, that's actually happening in some of the colleges. Yeah.
I mean, Dean Bibb has met with all of your program areas so far, isn't that right? So she's done that. I know that Dean Asai has it's been popping into classes as well. And so each college is handling that very differently, but we have such great commitment from our deans in particular to get out and reach into their students so they know about what's going on for them. Other questions?
Anything else? Oh, T-shirts. So without every good initiative has a T-shirt. And actually I wore my T-shirt yesterday. So on Tuesday, we're encouraging everybody to wear their T-shirts. Everybody wear their T-shirts on Tuesday. Nancy has those in the back of the room, small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, various different sizes. Did you want to say anything about it in particular?
Yes, Dean Bibb.
I have a question about the T-shirts. Thank you so much for delivering the 50 that you delivered to us. Unfortunately, even though all of our students left their calling card, 50 is not enough to cover all of the students who attended. So we figured out that we're going to give all the students who signed up for the work group a T-shirt, but it's the intent to have every student who comes, so it's not. And so it puts the deans in a really tough to decide. Yeah, well, we've decided that the students who have signed up for the work groups, that's because our town halls concluded but I just wanted to ask that question. Okay, I will. And then I heard Provost say, but I just want to clarify, then it's absolutely okay then if there are faculty and staff who are part of the work groups, because there are faculty and staff leading the work groups, that they also could have a T-shirt after students. But we want students to have them first, and then after faculty staff would like one. Okay. And they're willing to wear them. Then I need some more T-shirts. Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks.
We just placed our second order last week, so we should be getting them very, very soon.
But Dean Bibb, we can get you a T-shirt if you'd like one. Yeah, so, yeah. I wore mine yesterday. They're nice T-shirts actually. That you can use them for sports and whatever.
Any other final questions
see
or
my
comments? So please help us spread the word. Talk to your friends and colleagues about coming to a town hall. Talk to your colleagues, your friends, your student peers about the opportunity that we have among us to transform this institution. And then the other thing I like to think about is that after this first wave happens, imagine then what other things can happen on campus, right? So what goes into Grace Wilkie after most of the Grace Wilkie services move out? What happens to spaces in Brennan when the Kirsch Center moves out? And so it's that there's going to be this whole wave of kind of things that can happen on campus over the next 5 to 10 years that I think is very, very exciting. All right. Thank you all very much for coming.